on this bonus Locked On Jayhawks why Jim Zebrowski should have been the offensive coordinator hire a year ago. Now he gets the job for KU football.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. You can find our show wherever you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on this bonus episode, another bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you if you've already caught a bunch of our other ones or all of them with the other ones that we've been doing here. We're going to be talking about Kansas moving quickly. They promoted Jim Zebrowski to the new offensive coordinator role. There was the report yesterday with Pete Thamel where their, sitting offense coordinator Jeff Grimes was interviewing and in deep talks with the Wisconsin job. Sounds like he is taking it. Jim Zebrowski, who is the previous quarterbacks coach for Kansas, and I guess technically he was previously the co-offense coordinator. He got promoted to that last offseason, or I guess before the bowl game when Andy Kotelnicki left. Now he becomes the full-time offense coordinator. So we're going to break that down, what we know about what he has done as an offensive coordinator. And then also to finish up, Gage Keys, the former KU defense tackle who transferred to Auburn last year. Sounds like he's going to be coming back to Lawrence. So we'll get into all that on this episode of the show. So Zebrowski gets promoted here. Here's the quote from Lance Leipold in the KU release. Jim and I have worked together for more than 10 years, and he has a great knowledge of the game and our offense. Jim has been instrumental in our success and will continue to push our program forward. He's a quality mentor to our student athletes and takes pride in being a Jayhawk. Here's what Jim Zebrowski had to say. Quote, I am thankful to Coach Leipold and the University of Kansas for the opportunity to serve as offensive coordinator. I'm so excited for this opportunity to continue to work with our staff in developing our student athletes and moving the Kansas football program forward. Let's go, Rock Chalk. All right, let's talk about what he has done as offensive coordinator and what we can expect from him at KU and why I think this was a move they should have probably just made 365 days ago, a year ago on Locked On Jayhawks. Our episode today is brought to you by GameTime, where you can check out their new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks even filters out the fluff to show you all incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They have some great features, such as the all-in pricing, where you can toggle that feature, and you see the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout, and they have the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime Picks. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That'll get you $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, so Jim Zebrowski basically was promoted to offensive coordinator, and he will be the new offensive coordinator. So what is his profile? Obviously, he was co-offensive coordinator, QB coach. So he actually, Lance Leipold took over as the head coach of Wisconsin Whitewater in 2007. And that was his first year as a head coach. His first offensive coordinator, it was Jim Zebrowski. Brian Borland was his first defensive coordinator, who's currently the KU defensive coordinator. We'll see if that continues this year. That one might be a little bit different. We'll wait and see. But anyway, this is about the offensive coordinator. So he ended up staying with Lance Leipold at Wisconsin Whitewater from 2007 through 2009. So he was there 3 years as the offensive coordinator. And in that 3-year span, the team at Wisconsin Whitewater went 42-3, including 15-0 in his final season there. So obviously very successful. Now, unfortunately, if you go to like the Wisconsin Whitewater website, the team stats only go back to, I think, like 2011. So we don't have like individual stats about like, what were they doing? But I don't know how helpful that would be anyway. That was running offense 15 years ago. Obviously he has, probably evolved and changed some of the stuff of how he would call plays. So then he goes from there, takes the Northern Illinois quarterback job in 2010. And then eventually he winds up reuniting with Lance Leipold when Lance Leipold is at Buffalo. That doesn't come, though, till 2017. So the history here, if you remember, Lance Leipold takes the Buffalo job in 2015. And in the first year, Lance Leipold's offense averages 26.7 points per game. That's 82nd nationally. They go 5-7. The next year, in year 2 in 2016, they go 2-10. They're only averaging 16.5 points per game, 126th of 128 teams nationally. So Lance Leipold goes out, finds his former guy, Jim Zebrowski, brings him on. Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, the wonderkind offensive coordinator, is kind of going around right now at Penn State now at this point. He was the offensive coordinator in 2015 and 2016. But Lance Leipold said, okay, maybe you need some help. You're still going to be calling plays. But I bring in Jim Zebrowski as whatever, quarterbacks coach, co-offensive coordinator, whatever you want to call him. And immediately that first season, where again, it's Kotelnicki calling the plays, but Zebrowski's now on staff, they start to get better as an offense. They go up to 28.5 points per game, 63rd in the country. 2018, they go up to 34.6 points per game, 29th in the country. 31.5 points per game, 46th in the country in 2019. 2020, they average 43 points per game, 5th in the country. All of Andy Kotelnicki's most successful seasons with Lance Leipold, whether it was at Buffalo or at Kansas, it came with Jim Zebrowski on staff, helping him out. I think that's an important thing to remember. I mean, there were articles, there were stories talking about from Buffalo, like, blogs and stuff and papers, should they move on and find a different offensive coordinator. But they brought Jim Zebrowski in, and yes, I'm sure part of it was Kotelnicki, was Leipold reevaluating things, was players maybe getting better, getting their recruits in the program. But it's hard not to draw the line between when they started having success offensively under Lance Leipold was when they brought on Jim Zebrowski as the quarterback's coach. And obviously he stuck with Lance Leipold, moving over to Kansas in 2021, where he's been the quarterback's coach ever since. Then, as I mentioned, last December, Andy Kotelnicki takes the Penn State job, and Jim Zebrowski is promoted at that point to co-offensive coordinator, which was a title that they eventually, obviously shortly thereafter, hired Jeff Grimes to be the offensive coordinator, and they had him basically watch over the bowl practices and try to get in sync with everything Kansas wanted to do. But they had Jim Zebrowski call plays for the bowl game, and I'm sure it came with, obviously it was a title upgrade. I'm sure it came with a little bit of a payday upgrade also. But he called the plays for the bowl game, and Kansas puts up 49 points, and that's even putting up 49 points. I know not all of these turnovers were on the offensive side of not turnovers, sorry. I know all these penalties were not on the offensive side of the ball. But they had 216 penalty yards, right? Some of those were defensive, some of those were, unsportsmanlike, whatever. But even in a game where you had 216 penalty yards, some of it was on offense, you put up 49 points. Even in a game where you threw 3 interceptions and were -1 in turnovers, you put up 49 points. And we saw Kansas play that same UNLV team in week 3 of the season this year, and they only put up 20. Now, UNLV was much better defensively this year than they were last year. Like that is fact when you look at some of the stats across the board. But a lot of the personnel was very similar for KU. Yes, it was Jason Bean over Jalen Daniels. I kind of think the best version of Jalen Daniels is still better than the best version of Jason Bean. Maybe Bean's final season had a higher floor than what we saw from Jalen this year, but I don't know, you didn't even have Dominic Pooney in the bowl game though either. He opted out of the game. So, you could even argue your offensive line was in better shape this year because you had Logan Brown. He was injured for the bowl game. So from that perspective, you see that they had 22 first downs. They were 6 of 12 on third down, 1 of 2 on fourth down, 591 total yards of offense for Kansas against UNLV in the bowl game. I think what was most pleasing and interesting to me is that he wasn't one of those guys who, hey, I'm going to try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Again, this is kind of over-evaluating one specific game, and maybe this isn't going to be totally indicative, but in a game where Kansas, had 3.6 yards per carry as an offense, where Devin Neal had, 71 rushing yards, but it took 20 carries, 3.6 yards per carry. He said, you know what, we're going to throw it deep a bunch, average 16 yards per pass. They throw for 449 yards. Even in a game where Bean threw 3 interceptions, he had a 90.1 QBR. And yes, part of that was Jason Bean threw a great deep ball and the receivers were making big plays. There were a lot of plays, though, that were just dialed up where guys were running wide open in the secondary, right? Go back and watch that game. There are guys that are just running wide open. And I think a big credit to that goes to the offense and with Jim Zebrowski. This is the move that it's easy. Hindsight is 2020, right? But they probably should have just made this move last December. Do they end up making a bowl game this year if Jim Zebrowski is the offensive coordinator? I think so. All right, we talked about this on the earlier episode. I think Jeff Grimes did actually a pretty good job over the final 7 games of the season. It was still a downgrade from what you had last season, but because you had some of those struggles adjusting in the first 5 games of the season, right? You think about the Illinois game, which was close. You think about the UNLV game. You think about, I don't know, maybe the West Virginia. Overall, the offense was good in the West Virginia game, but it didn't close the game as you wanted to. So maybe that would have been different. I don't know. Very easily, if Jim Zebrowski's calling plays in the first half of the season, I'd like to think you win at least one more game and you're going bowling right now. And then you're getting those extra bowl practices and all the important things that come with playing for a bowl game. I think they'd be in a better shape should they do it. But you're not going to bat 1,000 on decisions, right? I mean, it's easy for us from the outside to play armchair quarterback, Monday morning quarterback. You're never going to go 100% on decisions. But they ripped the Band-Aid off. I know part of it was, the Band-Aid getting ripped off for you by Grimes getting offered the Wisconsin job. But you resurrected any mistake. I thought Matt Lubick from Nevada would have been an excellent choice to be offensive coordinator too, but I think this is an excellent choice as well. And I think this is making the decision, and we'll see. I mean, there's no guarantee that it is going to work, but the short sample size has been that he has worked as an offensive coordinator and play caller. And I think beyond that, it seems like guys really like him in the locker room. And it seems like the position he's been coaching, quarterback, which is, the guy who's calling the plays, the guys who's making audibles, the guys he's communicating with the most, seem to really like him, which is very, very important when you're running that position, whether it's for, keeping guys from entering the transfer portal, whether it's recruiting guys, whether it's just having the trust and having that chemistry with your quarterback is so critically important. And I think this is a home run for KU to promote from within for Jim Zebrowski. All right, let's finish up here. Gage Keys, back to the Jayhawks, ? This bonus episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Finishing things up, don't forget you can check out our bonus episodes on the Jeff Grimes getting the Wisconsin interview, where we talked about, what went wrong with the offense and why it's probably best for both parties. We had an episode talking about Jalen Daniels coming back for another season for KU, so check both of those out. And also mixed into it was like Savion Morrison transferring away and everything. Now, Gage Keys, who is a former Kansas defensive tackle, former Minnesota defensive tackle. I guess technically he is a transfer from Auburn at this point. Sounds like he's going to be back with KU. Keys is officially listed as, and I think at Auburn he might have played like strong side defensive end, 6'4", 291. At Kansas, he's more of used as a defensive tackle. He's got good size. He's got good athleticism for his size. Started his career in Minnesota, ended up transferring to KU. He came along with Austin Booker. Those two guys were really good friends, really tight. Booker goes off to the NFL. Keys gets offered a bag in the transfer portal. The rumors that were coming around were that he got like 200,000 in the transfer portal. I don't know if there's truth to that or if it's around that number or what, but like you can understand why a guy like Gage Keys, who he's not popping up on NFL draft boards as being, this projected third round pick, would want that life-changing money. I mean, even if he was, right? I mean, and I don't know, how much was Kansas offering? Was it 50,000? Was it 100,000? Was it 100? Right? Who knows? It's hard not to take that money, right? Because that can really set you up for life after football in a real way, especially if you're not going to be a pro. So I never faulted him for taking that money, but also I think he found out a little bit that, sometimes in life you have to make decisions. Do you want to go for the financials or the what's going to make you happy, right? And I think sometimes you find out the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It seemed like he was always invested in KU, even when he left, and that this was just a personal decision about finances and setting himself up, which, again, I'm not going to blame a guy for that. Like, I totally understand. And now he kind of gets to have his cake and eat it too, because it sounds like he posted on some of his social medias, or didn't post, his like profiles on a couple of his social medias mention him as being like a Kansas student athlete again or something like that. So sounds like he's going to be boomeranging back to Kansas. And he was really coming on in his one season at Kansas. So he only played 2 games last year at Auburn, didn't log a tackle. He did have a quarterback hurry, but the year before Kansas, he had 21 tackles. Pro Football Focus actually gave him 27. He had 13 quarterback pressures, which for comparison, this year's KU team, 13 quarterback pressures would have ranked 6th. And it would have been tied second among interior defensive linemen. And that was from 2023 Gage Keys, who was a rotational guy who wasn't playing a ton early in the season, started to play more as the season went on, was a rotational defensive lineman. He was projected to be one of your starters, if he would have stuck around last year. And I don't know what it'll be this year because now you've had some guys emerge at that defense tackle spot, but certainly he would be in the rotation, you would think, by adding him, and you needed more depth. You lost Caleb Taylor to graduation, I believe. You lose Javier Derrick to graduation. Like, you could use more depth, and I think Gage Keys also represents somebody with a high ceiling, and it seems like KU got the most out of him between any of his previous stops. So I like this move to bring him back, and I think it kind of works out for all parties involved again. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Find our show anywhere you get your podcast. More breaking news. We'll be back. If not, we'll be back Sunday for some KU Mizzou talk. See you then.